I almost never replay games. Even with an ever-growing catalog of stories, adventures, and experiences I want to enjoy, I find it difficult to return to games I've already had a satisfying experience with. There's most certainly an exception to every rule, and in this case, there are three. Even with the barrage of new titles coming to every console and platform, there are three games that I find myself constantly going back to: Ocarina of Time, Kingdom Hearts, and Breath of the Wild. I've talked about these three titles on my channel already, and two of them I've covered in several videos. However, every time I start playing them again or think about them as I reminisce, I find that I have more to say about each one. I want this video to serve as my definitive thoughts on each game, allowing me to move on and spend more time thinking and writing about new experiences from future games. This doesn't mean I'll never mention these games again, especially if a topic dictates that I use one as an example. But I am ready to close this chapter of my YouTube journey. So let's go ahead and start with Ocarina of Time is arguably the best title in the Legend of Zelda series, claiming its spot as a fan favorite. I am among those fans. However, Ocarina of Time isn't just my favorite Zelda game, it's my favorite video game in general. I played plenty of platformers and racing games like Donkey Kong Country and Mario Kart before Ocarina of Time. I enjoyed video games and thought they were simply something fun to play here and there with my brothers. Ocarina of Time was different. It showed me what games could be, a story-driven experience with a living, breathing world. It would be easy to look at the game's story now, pick it apart, and compare it to some of the storytelling titans of today. Sure, it wouldn't match the quality of Elden Ring's lore or the well-rounded characters of The Last of Us, but Ocarina of Time was the precursor for those games. It paved the way and showed game developers that story was just as important as gameplay. I would argue that Ocarina of Time is actually a philosophical piece of media. It deals with topics of greed and sinister acts from several political parties. As a kid, I didn't notice these subtleties, but over the years and several playthroughs, these topics became clear and I could see them happening in the world around me. I admit that I tend to philosophize most things, but this is how I navigate life. I look for a deeper meaning and use it to improve my understanding. Without getting into specifics, I had a really difficult childhood and video games were my safe haven. Through video games, I learned many life lessons, and Ocarina of Time was a game that showed me that video games had something to teach. The hero of Time's story is one of tragedy, from start to finish. He was a silent sufferer, an outcast, and all but forgotten. Despite all this, he was one of the most important heroes in Hyrule's history. After all, his journey is responsible for the infamous timeline split that lore lovers discuss to no end. At the time of Link's birth, Hyrule was consumed by a blood-drenched civil war. Link's mother fled with her newborn to Kokiri Forest in hopes of saving her child. For unknown reasons, an injury perhaps, Link's mother perished, but not before entrusting her child to the Great Deku Tree. Our hero was an orphan, unwelcomed in the only home that he knew and plagued by nightmares. His nightmares were vivid and oftentimes terrifying. The Great Deku Tree exclaimed that a grand evil was brewing and that he had been cursed by that very evil. He asked Link if he had enough courage to rid him of such a curse. The child, who nightmares had tormented, should have fled, but he did not. Even at a young age, the hero of Time felt the importance of facing one's fears head-on. Young Link accepted the Great Deku Tree's plea for help. Seeing child Link not only face his fears but also help others despite those fears was inspiring. That lesson alone solidified Ocarina of Time's importance to me. Aside from setting itself apart in the realm of storytelling, Ocarina of Time also shocked me with its intricate gameplay, which can be played on multiple platforms these days. I used to prefer the original version, however I'm starting to lean toward the 3DS version as it allows me to chill on the couch and play even when my family is using the TV. With every new playthrough, I find new things to enjoy and appreciate. This is probably due to never actually 100%ing the game. I've only recently become a bit of a completionist, so at the time of writing this video script, I was working on a 100% run on my 3DS version. My favorite part of this run so far is collecting all the heart pieces and heart containers, a mechanic I would love to see return in future 3D Zelda games. Breath of the Wild's approach to collecting hearts and stamina vessels didn't feel as rewarding. The only way to get heart containers was via shrines, making them only available in one way. Collecting heart containers in Ocarina of Time feels so much more rewarding because of how many different ways there are to find them. Side quests, map secrets, and minigames all present an opportunity to obtain heart pieces, keeping the hunt for them fresh and fun. All three of the aforementioned activities are ones that I want to see reintroduced into future titles. Yes, side quests are part of every video game, however the way Ocarina of Time presented them is special. There aren't any side quest checklists or HUD markers to indicate a proper path or order to find these quests. The game just lets you explore and figure things out on your own. I've talked about games being a little too hand-holdy in recent times, and I understand the importance of accessibility, but I'd like to see more games, especially Zelda, offer a no side quest indication mode. There's a particular magic to not only finding the start of a side quest, like the trading quest which starts with a cuckoo egg, but also figuring out how to complete the entire quest alone, making rewards like the Begoron sword even more amazing. Minigames in Ocarina of Time are some of my favorite objectives in the entire game. Simple as they may be, there's a lot of fun to be had, especially with the rewards that can be claimed after winning. Each minigame has several prizes, giving the player a reason to keep playing, even if the mechanics are a bit repetitive. When I'm not playing minigames or looking for heart pieces, I find myself enthralled with the outstanding dungeons Ocarina of Time has to offer. I mean, they are some of the most talked about dungeons in the series. And when people argue that the next 3D Zelda game needs to have classic dungeons, Ocarina of Time is the game most pointed to as a reference for this argument. I dedicated a whole video to the Great Deku Tree dungeon, so I won't talk about it much here. However, it was the first Zelda dungeon I ever played, and it made me fall in love with the idea of dungeon crawling. Ocarina of Time bolsters 12 dungeons altogether, with each one being significantly different from the last. New ways of traversal, weapons, and gear are introduced in each one of these smaller experiences. Not only do these dungeons explore new ways of playing the game, but they expertly showcase environmental storytelling. The Shadow Temple is by far the best example of this idea. Earlier, I mentioned Hyrule Civil War, but we are never shown any of its events. The Shadow Temple sheds some light on some of the questionable acts carried out by the Sheikah in the royal family's interest. This temple was used as a prison for captured enemies of the royal family. As Link travels through this underground prison, the horrors of war are brought to life. The walls are lined with skeletal remains, rooms are filled with torture devices, and whispers of spirits call out to Link. Evil has made a home in this place, and it decorates the walls with its presence. There is an idea in storytelling called show don't tell. Ocarina of Time executes this idea with excellence. It'll be difficult for me to find a game that beats Ocarina of Time as my favorite, although several have come close. Even if I don't talk about it as much on the channel after this video, I will continue to play it over and over again. Next up is... Although the Kingdom Hearts series has an impressive 13 games in its catalog, the very first game is the only one I find myself going back to. I first played Kingdom Hearts with my cousin who owned it on PS2. I went to his house for a sleepover and we played it for the entire night, staying up way too late. For the next year or so, every time we were together, we played on my save file so I could actually finish it. He'd already completed it by that time, however, he wanted to witness my full experience with the game. The following games in the series were ones we each experienced separately. Don't get me wrong, I loved many of the sequels, but when the full collection came to PS4, I instantly gravitated toward the first game again. Ever since then, I relived memories of my carefree days playing games with my cousin after a full day of playing out in the summer sun. Aside from good memories I've attached to the first game, I think I go back to it because of the story's simplicity. As many people know, the Kingdom Hearts series has some of the messiest and most confusing lore in gaming. Many of the games have events that take place at the same exact time as other events in separate games. Even though I love learning about the lore, I find the simplicity of the first game to be an experience I want to relive. Sora's longing to find what exists outside of his tiny island, his world, was a feeling I shared. I grew up in a small town where people hardly left. I wanted to leave and see different aspects of not only the world, but life. Just as Sora left his home behind and traveled to various worlds, I had the opportunity to travel to several countries. I spent time in the Philippines, South Korea, and Japan. Having traveled to these places let me understand the message of Kingdom Hearts on a deeper level. We are all one. Most people are good and just want to live happy lives with their loved ones. There is evil in the world, however, it's not strong enough to destroy the human spirit. Kingdom Hearts was, without a doubt, made for a younger audience, but its themes are important for any age group. I tend to only talk about Kingdom Hearts' story and themes, but the gameplay is something I love as well. The mechanics of it all aren't a perfect experience, but the gameplay loop is one that I enjoy. When I was young, I only cared about making Sora as strong as possible, disregarding the other characters in my party. The more I played, the more I realized building my party member's strength was crucial, especially when playing on higher difficulty settings. Finding ways to mix and match items and gear to each character's strength is something I enjoy spending more time on these days. The biggest factor that makes or breaks Kingdom Hearts for people is the inclusion of Disney characters and worlds. This was a huge selling point for me when my cousin told me about it. I was and still am a lover of Disney classics. These movies were such an intricate part of my childhood and something I now share with my children. The ability to explore these beloved worlds beyond what is shown in the films makes the exploration of Kingdom Hearts so intriguing. Running around Halloween Town or swinging through the jungle with Tarzan felt special and made viewing these films again later more enjoyable. When it comes to iconic weapons, the Keyblade is by far one of the coolest. Not only can it open and shut doors to other worlds, but it can be a conduit for magic and seal away darkness. A huge chunk of Kingdom Hearts lore revolves around this weapon. What makes the Keyblade stand out among the other iconic weapons is that there are more than one, and many people can wield them simultaneously. The base form of the Keyblade is called the Kingdom Key, however different charms can be attached, chaining the Keyblade's form and abilities. This allows for each user to wield the Keyblade based on their strengths and personality. Playing with a variety of these Keyblade forms keeps the gameplay fresh and makes replaying Kingdom Hearts more inviting. Even when I'm not playing Kingdom Hearts, I enjoy listening to its OST. Music is such an important part of games for me, and Kingdom Hearts has some of the best video game soundtracks. I even started listening to Hikaru Utada, the Japanese-American singer whose vocals grace the intro cutscenes of Kingdom Hearts. Simple and Clean is a song I've listened to countless times, however, I even began listening to her non-Kingdom Hearts related songs. From the gameplay to the story and music, Kingdom Hearts will forever stand out as a special experience. Last but certainly not least, Breath of the Wild was the game that not only reignited my love for the Zelda series, but for gaming in general. When the Nintendo Switch was announced, I questioned if buying the console would be worth it. You see, for a year or two before this announcement, I had all but stopped gaming. I almost lost all interest. I missed out on most of the 3DS era, even though I owned the handheld console, and I completely missed out on the Wii U. I also missed the first couple years of the PlayStation 4's life cycle. No games were grabbing my attention other than playing online shooters here and there with friends. I held off grabbing a new Switch. Well, until one of my best friends picked up his Switch and a copy of Breath of the Wild. He invited me over to not only try the console, but to try the game because he knew I was a fan of the older Zelda games. We sat together as we watched the iconic panning shot of the biggest Hyrule yet, a shot that many games have tried to replicate. As we took turns exploring the Great Plateau, I felt my passion for video games rekindling. About 2 months after that first play session, I took a month-long vacation from work and went to visit my family. I knew this vacation would be a perfect time for me to grab myself a Switch and fall back in love with gaming. A few days after making it home, I went to GameStop and bought the last Nintendo Switch they had, along with Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. For the first week of my vacation, my then girlfriend, now wife, was with me to meet my family. We played Mario Odyssey together until she had to fly back home for her next college semester. Once it was just me, I started playing Breath of the Wild. My younger brothers still had school and my parents still had work during the remainder of my vacation. So when everyone was out of the house, I played Breath of the Wild non-stop. Then I would take a break to visit with everyone when they got home. Then once everybody went to bed, I would stay up way too late watching countless videos about this new Zelda that was taking the internet by storm. That became my cycle. Play all day, visit with family, watch new videos at night. I was not only in love with gaming again, but with the Zelda series. Until the release of Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild attracted my attention several times. Everything from replaying the Great Plateau to trying a 100% Master Mode run kept me involved with Breath of the Wild. I hadn't yet started my YouTube channel, so I never really had much of a chance to give my thoughts about this monumental game. I figured my videos would get lost in the sea of Breath of the Wild content that had been created over the years. It wasn't until Tears of the Kingdom that I talked about the game, but I'm finally going to give my thoughts and share a few experiences along the way. Like many people, the vast open world of Breath of the Wild brought a particular sense of wonder. The need to explore and experiment is what created my long gaming sessions. Learning most of the mechanics during the Great Plateau segment has been one of the most memorable starts to a game that I can think of. From finding various weapons to experiencing multiple weather conditions, the Great Plateau showed players what could be expected for the entire game. Cooking was one of those mechanics I learned early and became excited by its possibilities. I love to cook in real life, so being able to experiment in a game without buying the groceries was way more than welcome. I would try combinations of meat and vegetables, making sure to add rock salt to make dishes I wanted to eat in real life. Breath of the Wild's cooking is surprisingly intricate, with 116 different meals that can be made. Even though cooking is such a small part of the game, it helps create the bigger picture of the overall world. After having shrines in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they seem to be a bit underwhelming. But back at the start of Breath of the Wild, shrines were new and exciting. They were smaller experiences that gave me a break from the vast exploration. I am a checklist gamer, and my list was never ending in the open world. Therefore, shrines helped me keep on track. The shrines felt like mini checkpoints or rest stops along my journey across Hyrule. A journey filled with beautiful nature, amazing architecture, and terrifying monsters. Before Breath of the Wild, I hadn't played many challenging games, at least in the realm of combat. Looking back, Breath of the Wild is nowhere near as difficult as I assumed it was, especially when I came face to face with certain enemies. In particular, the first time I ran into a Lionel, I didn't know such a creature even existed in the game, and I ran for my life. I remember asking my friend if he had seen one. He had seen one and reacted similarly. Back then, it felt like my friends and the internet were all exploring a brand new world for the very first time as we worked together to catalog the wildlife, its dangers, and its benefits. From my perspective, it was the most positive, fun, and engaging time for the gaming community, and I really hope to see that again in the future, as I believe negativity has become much too popular in gaming and otherwise. But I digress. The Lionel wasn't the only enemy I tried to avoid. Guardians were the bane of my underskilled existence. I stayed as far away from Central Hyrule as possible. I feared the laser beams of those robotic nightmares, which kept me away from ever even entering Hyrule Castle for quite some time. But over time, I got better at Breath of the Wild's combat and began to take on the enemies I ran from. My first playthrough truly felt like a journey from weakness and fear to strength and courage, which made the game even more immersive. The mysteries and wonders of Breath of the Wild never seemed to end. Everywhere I traveled had something to look at or interact with. Moments like these kept me coming back for more, playthrough after playthrough, game session after game session. Tears of the Kingdom has promptly taken Breath of the Wild's spot. However, I consider these two experiences to be one and the same. Tears of the Kingdom may be the game I boot up these days, but it carries the legacy of Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom is a game I've covered quite a bit on my channel, and I still have some drive to make new videos, but Breath of the Wild will continue as the game that lives on in my memory, and one that I hold near and dear to my heart. Now that I've gotten the last of my ramblings out about these three outstanding games, it's time to look to the future and be on the lookout for the next game to capture my excitement just as these three have. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for your time and attention. It really means a lot, and it is worth a lot. I would love to hear about the games that you can't stop revisiting down in the comments. Well, until next time, I hope you have a great one.